Welcome to the podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories behind construction business leaders. We will share how they got started, how they found success, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Eric Fortenberry. Welcome to Builder Stories. Welcome back, everybody. Today, I'm excited. I've got a fellow Texan with me. Kirk is the president of Greymark Design Build. They're located in Houston, Texas. Very excited to have you on Builder Stories. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So why don't you kick us off as usual? Give us a little bit of background, who you are, how'd you get into construction, what led you to Greymark?
Sure. So we're Greymark Design Build. We were a Greymark construction company when we first started. So a little atypical, especially in Texas. The company actually started in 1995 with my mom. So my mom actually started it. I was very young. She was between the names Watermark and Greystone. She liked those two, and she wanted to combine them. And so it was Greymark or Waterstone, and we thought Waterstone sounded like a development. So my sister and I next to that, I have a younger sister who's 2.5 years younger. So she started the business when we were really young, and she started at Swingin' Hammers. There's a historic neighborhood not too far called The Heights, and that's where she started out working on houses from the 20s, 30s. And then I grew up in the industry, going to job sites, sitting for inspectors. Fun fact, they oftentimes won't red tag if a child is the one waiting for the inspector. They feel a little bad. So that was her little trick to have that done. I would clean up job sites. So that's kind of how I got started. When I was in high school, she actually had me run payroll. So she would take me out of school on Fridays when class was over, and I would actually start doing her payroll for her as a teenager. So it's pretty wild. I can't believe in hindsight that she would do that, but it was so fun. It was really fun to be able to do that. So then I went to college, and her theory on it was that she wanted me to be able to spread my wings. So during all of this time, she's working, she's growing the business, she's, establishing everything. I'm going to college, and I get a degree in financial consulting with a minor in economics, so super business. End up getting my master's in accounting, take the CPA exam. So super business, not construction, still relevant. So I do accounting for a few years. She's asking me questions about things. It was kind of fun to get to talk about the business in a way where we were more equals. And then when in about 2017, I approached her and said I was interested in coming on board. And so in 2017 was Hurricane Harvey, which it was a lot more traumatic for us, but I think the rest of the country probably knows about it. But we got 52 inches of rain in 3 days. It was insane. So much of the city flooded. She was inundated with work and with calls. And so I started helping out with her. Even though I had a full-time job, I started helping out with her. And then I came on board in April of 2018, full-time. During Hurricane Harvey, she was diagnosed with her cancer had come back. So it had started in 2015, but it had come back in 2017. And she ended up passing away in 2019, August 2019. So that's when I took over full time. And since then, it's just been me and my team, and we've been, going ever since. And despite the fact that this is not what I went to school for, it's always been a passion of mine, and I've always loved doing this.
Yeah. Well, I'm really sorry to hear about your mother. It's tragic. Very, very interesting though that you literally grew up on the job site from a very young age. I love the inspector story. That's pretty awesome. I could see some others maybe trying to plant their kid there, waiting for the waiting for the green tag as well.
Yes, despite the fact that my sister does not work with me, she is also an architect in Dallas. So she is still, it's in our blood. My dad flips houses for a living out in like Lake Sam Rayburn area. So kind of far away from where I am and where my sister is. But I had no other choice with my mom, my dad, my sister. All of us are in the same industry. So
That's awesome. I mean, I love hearing the stories of people who have actually grown up, you know, in the trades, on the job site. Like you really understand what it's like, to run and be part of a construction business, which I think it gives you tremendous advantage versus someone who's just kind of getting into it later in their career and sort of, hey, I'll start a construction business, but like they haven't, actually gone and done, decades of hands-on experience to know what it's like. So very neat that you've got that, and I'm sure you'll always cherish those memories.
yeah, it's a really different way of getting to know your parents when you're actually going to work with them and helping them out with their job. It's pretty fun and builds your relationship in a completely different facet. It's
Yeah. I mean, running payroll as a teenager has got to be pretty interesting. Seeing all of the the salaries and the pay, and just like kind of being exposed to that at a young age. I mean, what a valuable opportunity for you. And I mean, ultimately, that kind of doesn't make me surprised that you end up going into the accounting route and going down that path when you saw what it took to actually do that back office administrative type work to help make sure people got paid.
I will say I have never been the one to like prepare the financial statements, do the AP, do the AR. That's never been outside of when I was in high school. That's never been something that I've really done. And I think part of it is because I realized from 16 that maybe that path wasn't for me, but I did still enjoy like the business aspects of it. So even when I was a CPA, I was an auditor. So very like high level flux analysis, looking at, changes between financial statements, trying to figure out where are things that are kind of hiding in the numbers. So, numbers can tell you a lot. And I think we as business owners understand that if you don't know your numbers, then you're flying blind. And so having that experience from a young age, I think also helped me understand why I wanted to go into finance and accounting. And that is still something that I really enjoy is the numbers. That's kind of how I approach sales as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually my background as well. I did finance and accounting undergrad and ended up going to investment banking for all of 9 months before I quit to start my first business. But I feel like having that that background and that experience, understanding numbers and financials and cash flow, that definitely is a very great skill set for any business owner, business leader to have and to understand, even if you're not doing the day-to-day accounting and all of that. It's so important. I feel like a lot of business owners, they struggle to understand how all the financials come into play, and they think, oh, we had a great month and we got $100,000 in the bank and we're doing so good. And it's like, well, actually, hold on, we better go look at those liabilities and how much do you owe to other people before we declare a victory here.
Absolutely. I remember when I was first kind of getting out of school and working on things, my mom actually at one point asked me why, because in the peer group that we're part of, the statement of cash flows is not something that you review as part of your packet. And so she'd never really put a whole lot of stock into that specific report. And so she asked me, why does my bank balance not tie to my net profit? So it was kind of fun to like have that conversation with her and try to explain, hey, that is not the way that it works. There are non-cash transactions, there are cash transactions, and these can show up here, and kind of teach her a little bit about that. And the fact that she listened to me, frankly, shocking, but she respected me enough and my education enough to actually listen to what I was saying and see me as an equal in that regard. Obviously, she's still my parent, but uh, it was, I don't know, it's just really, really fun to have that experience and to have that respect from her.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm curious. I mean, you had been obviously kind of part of the business for many years, on and off, kind of before school, after school, part time, full time, and then ultimately after your mother's passing, you ended up taking over the business. Can you tell us a little bit more about that transition and what was it like? having to step into that, that leadership role and take the reins. I mean, how were you able to sort of come to terms with all that? And yeah, what was it like being at the helm?
Well, Eric, that's a great question. What I neglected to mention about August 2019 is that I was also super pregnant. I was about 28 weeks, I think. So not only was I suddenly taking over my mom's business that she had grown from scratch, and now I was entrusted with this, her baby, my third sibling. But I also was growing a small human, and so that was pretty wild. And my husband did work with me at the time, so it was a whole family affair. I When it happened, I leaned heavily on my team. So a lot of people have, a lot of business owners have the theory that they know all of the things and they have to tell their team what to do and how to do it. And there's actually a book that I read early on. It's called Turn the Ship Around. And it's really about bottom up leadership, not just top down. And so that really had an impact on me in empowering my team to be able to make decisions, because I don't think I would have been able to survive without them, especially when we were planning a company outing for a Friday, just as a way for us all to get together and bond. This was a few weeks after my mom died. Everyone in the company was reeling. We have a lot of people that have been with the company for a very long time. So this wasn't just affecting me, it was affecting the entire team. The entire team was grieving and mourning. Um, and so I I was I had a bunch of beer from a baby shower. And so I was loading a cooler with beer, put it into my car, and I was in my head thinking, oh, you're not supposed to lift heavy things when you're pregnant. And at that moment, I thought my water had broken. Turns out it was blood. So I ended up having an emergency C-section that day instead of going to the company outing.
My gosh.
So, yeah, it was quite an adventure. And so I hadn't signed checks. It was a Friday, and we sign checks every Friday. So I had to have somebody bring me the checks to the hospital where I had a baby come out of me. They are sewing me up, and somebody's bringing me checks to my hospital room, like an hour postpartum, just signing checks.
Oh my gosh. Wow, Kelly.
I This was a Friday. I got discharged on a Monday, my birthday. Actually, I got discharged on my birthday, and I was back at work on Tuesday.
Wow.
Yeah. Then I was
Wow.
in the hospital again Tuesday night and discharged again on Wednesday. And they told me that if I went back to work on Thursday, that I was going to be back in the hospital and it was going to be worse. So they made me stay home. So I finished out that week at home. And then I went back to work the following Monday.
Holy
I don't
cow.
recommend it.
Yeah, that is wow. I'm shocked. That's man, good. Very very impressive that you had the ability to pull yourself to just do whatever it took that you had to do. I mean, I certainly hope that others maybe can figure out a way to not have to push themselves so hard, but I
Mhm.
can only imagine your mindset and what you had gone through and just felt like your back was against the wall and you had no choice.
I had no choice. In my head, failure wasn't an option. So to me, it was never, are we going to make it? It was always, how are we going to make it? How do I survive this? How do we get through it? Not, are we going to? Uh, to my benefit, my mother did have some life insurance policies, and they were actually like a year shy of running out. So for anyone that does not have life insurance, key man policies, anything like that, that is what allowed us to keep the doors open, was the ability for me to draw on that money. We had also, this was quite the perfect storm. We'd also just built our building. And so we had zero cash because all of it had gone into building a building. So it was quite the perfect storm. And this was, again, 2019. So we all know what happened in 2020. It was quite the adventure. But I was also part of a peer roundtable group. And one of my peers actually flew in and came to sit with my team and had our office manager print off our financials, and he went through our financials and said, cut this, reduce that, do this. I mean, he was even like, fire people. I'm going to fire people. Like, if you want me to fire them for you, just send them right in. I'll do it. He's like, you can't afford all of this. And so it was pretty wild. I am so appreciative of the fact that he did not have to do that. He did not have to fly to my city and do this, but he did because he's one of the kindest people ever. And unfortunately for us, Houston's infrastructure is also terrible. And we had a boil notice during the same time that he was here. So he couldn't actually get water from anywhere and all the restaurants were shut down. It was,
My gosh. It just doesn't stop, does it?
I think maybe I'm cursed and I refuse to acknowledge it. I don't know. But, maybe that's it. 'Cause yeah, therapy is a really great thing. It's a,
Obviously, you've come out stronger on the other side. So, it must have all ended up working out for you. I mean, life is very unpredictable. It's who knows what you're going to get thrown. Being a business leader is extremely unpredictable. Constant challenges, fires. Just having to deal with all the hardest problems that sort of bubble up to the top. And at the end of the day, I think that it's important that we do our best and leave it all out there on the field. But at the end of the day, there's only so much that we can do, and we got to be able to go to bed and say, man, I did my best today. I'm going to get some rest, and we're going to wake up and we're going to do it all over again. And tomorrow's going to be a great day. And it's one day after another sometimes. And it sounds like
Mhm.
you had quite the ordeal for a while there.
Yep. It was 2019 through 2023 into 2024, I think were our hardest years. And then things really started to click. It was a lot of lessons that I had to learn. And despite the fact that I did go to college for 5 years, the best education that I got was still doing the things, making those wrong decisions, and then figuring out what I can do to fix it. Because I mean, as a business owner, you make tons of bad decisions. You do the wrong thing, and then you figure out, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try it this way this time, and learning from it, and listening to other people and learning from their mistakes is also super important. So that way, I made my own mistakes. I didn't make theirs, but I also learned from them as well. I heard this thing the other day, and it was, as a business owner, you're either having your best year ever or you're about to go out of business. And oftentimes that's in the same day. And I feel that deeply sometimes, but it's it's really highs and lows, and it's about being able to manage that and work through it and not have that anxiety kind of haunt you, and being able to regulate your nervous system despite the fact that it can be pretty chaotic. I mean, thankfully now I'm at a point where it isn't chaotic, and that's something that I've had to work through, is the fact that under for those many years I was under such intense stress that it was pretty clear what I was supposed to be doing and how to do it. And I had to just do the things that I knew I needed to do. And then you reach a point where it's calm. And then that's also hard to do as well, especially when you're used to firefighting. I know you had Doug Howard on the podcast, but he was my business coach for a while. And I remember one of the things he said is, just because the walls aren't on fire doesn't mean that everything is bad. So he was with me through all the firefighting years, but it
Sure.
was,
So
yeah,
is that so
good.
you said you're part of a peer group. It sounds
Mhm.
like you had a business coach, Doug. I mean, like, would you credit those to kind of where you sort of learned how to lead and kind of how to build yourself out of this this situation? I mean, is there anything else that you think about, like, that made a huge impact on you as a leader and really helped you grow into your role?
Absolutely. I am a huge believer in support networks and peer networks. So yes, I am part of a peer roundtable group, Remodelers Advantage. I heavily leaned on that group. They are fantastic, wonderful human beings that I'm in a different group right now, but I talk to the other people and see them, and they are a large reason why I'm standing here. I'm also part of the Greater Houston Builders Association. So it's our local association that's part of Texas Association of Builders and NAHB. So in Houston specifically, we don't have any other large chapters like NARI or anything. We only have GHBA. It's really the only one that can survive in our city because it's such a large chapter. And so that is another one, is having peers in my city that I can ask questions of too. And that's been very important for me being able to survive this. Doug Howard really, really helped me at the absolute worst times. He was really fantastic. And it was funny because sometimes when you're in those moments where everything feels the darkest, you think that there must be some sort of like complicated answer that you need to do. Like sometimes you overcomplicate it. And it was so funny. One of the most powerful things that he and I did was just a revenue worksheet. Just the most simple tool imaginable. And I, as a CPA, am huge on spreadsheets. And so I would do all of these crazy calculations and formulas. And really the thing I think that was most impactful for me in that moment was just that revenue spreadsheet, which was literally the most simple thing created. But it's so powerful because it's simple.
Was this like to model out your growth and what you needed to make every month? And
Yep. Because I would get either too far in the weeds of this week, or I would get too far down the line into next year, and I couldn't keep the focus in the right area. And so he worked with me in 1 month and 3 month increments. What's happening this 1 month? What do we need to do for next month? And how are we doing for the month after that? I mean, it was really just like keeping a really short and tight window is kind of what got us through some of those worst times. And then interestingly, I did action coach for 6 months before Doug Howard. Action coach wasn't for me, but I learned a lot of really interesting things that ended up working out really well from that. And so despite the fact that something isn't for me necessarily, there's still absolutely things to learn. So I learned a lot about changing your mindset about things. So instead of like mantras, it sounds so cheesy when you talk about it, but like mantras and like writing a letter to yourself for the future of, what does your life look like in 3 months or 6 months or something, and writing that letter of, this is who I am now. And then actually watching it play out because you've changed your mindset into this is what is going to happen. And then you kind of just make it happen. It's crazy the way that the mind works like that.
I mean, I feel like it's the same way with setting goals. If you don't set a goal, you're never going to hit it because you don't have one. But when you set that goal, it's like, I know, here at JobTrade every year, we look at next year's monthly goals and we're like, how in the world are we going to hit that? But then somehow you get into it and it's like you set your sight on that goal, and lo and behold, like you somehow it just sort of seems to work itself out when you've got that vision and you've got that, desire to reach that point, that next step, whatever it is. Like, I think having that mindset that, you're going to do whatever it takes, but like knowing where you're going is so important, because so many people don't, they're just kind of doing the same thing over and over, but they don't really have this like destination or this place that they're trying to work towards. And so like having that and giving that like a solid anchor, in your direction, and, how will we know when we're successful? Well, let's hit that goal. That is a great way to get a team motivated, to get yourself motivated, to, kind of rally around that. And, it's something that you can also fall back on. And look, when you don't hit it, okay, well, let's look at why we didn't hit it. What assumptions did we make? What should we have done, or what are we going to do differently next month to make sure we do hit it? Like, I think so many teams, they don't take the time to really plan out, their growth, and plan out, their year, and what do we need to do? Let's break it down monthly. Like, how many customers do we need to win? How many jobs? What's the average price point? Is that enough? Are we charging enough? Like, do we have the team to go win those jobs, to go deliver on those jobs? I think like going through that exercise, is so important. And I feel like a lot of people, they try to sort of do it when it's too late. They're already in hot water wondering how we got here. And now you're trying to work backwards instead of, preventing yourself from getting into that position.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with that fully. I see that a lot in my roundtable group, just over time, not one company in particular, but I see that a lot, especially when people are thinking about transitioning out. They'll say, I want to be out in, 3 to 5 years, but they haven't even begun anything related to that transition. And it's like, whoa, you really should have planned this out a while ago. I mean, for me, I'm oh God, how old am I? 37? I'll be 38 this year. One of those weird years where I don't really know how old I am. I'm between
You,
35 and 40. I don't
you
know.
quit counting after a while, and it's all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I'm not quite to 40 yet, but I'm not 35 anymore. I'm in that like late 30s era. So I don't really know what the future has for me. But what I do know is that in the short term, I know where I'm going. So I actually have a 1, 3, 5, 7, and 10 year. That's a little bit more than most people would probably prepare. For me, it makes sense because I really think that it needs to be broken up into those littler chunks for me, the way that my mind works, because I need to know where I'm going in 10 years, but I also need to know what I need to do in between to get there and how to make sure that I'm on track. And so with each of that, I have an org chart. I have assumptions that I'm making. So, what can a salesperson sell? What can a project manager do? What can design produce? Things like that. And then I also have a budget associated with it, with salaries laid out for all of the team members, just to make sure that I'm tracking where I need to be. And then I also do, to your point about, job size and number of jobs, where does our current job size average? Where does it need to be? And how many projects does that mean that we're doing? Just to make sure that all of that makes sense together. Because otherwise, I mean, anyone can set a goal and say, I'm going to be a $20 million company. And it's okay, but how? How are you going to do it? I mean, you can set a goal, but you got to have steps that you need to do to get there. So that's been really helpful. And it is kind of funny to see it working its way out, because I started this back in 2022, I think, is when I started it. And yeah, we've been tracking where we need to be.
That's awesome. Are
Mm-hmm.
there any other, kind of, it sounds like maybe this is something kind of new that you had implemented with the business. Are there any other, kind of systems or processes that, that you have implemented since taking over the business that you feel like have made a big, impact on the company and sort of helped you to take the helm and steer it?
Absolutely. So first of all, people always talk about hiring and how important it is. And I had never hired anybody before, and I'd never fired anybody before. And firing was terrifying, but really it is like ripping a Band-Aid. Um, I've since had to fire a couple of people, not too many, but enough to have some experience. But hiring, I think, is really the most important thing. And I think having the right team around me has been one of the hardest things that I had to learn, was how to build the right team and how to manage them appropriately. So in my first beginning years, I didn't understand how to really have a backbone, to be perfectly candid. I I didn't know how to stand up for myself in a way that would be both strong and respectful at the same time. And so that was something I had to learn in terms of like processes. We didn't really have any when I started. Nothing was really a process. And so we had to have more defined process. My mom was, oh God, such a force of nature. She was shorter than me, but her shoes were so big to fill. I mean, just an incredible person. So I think a lot of the reason why we were so successful before is because of just who she was. But unfortunately, Leslie King is not a process. And so I had to figure out how to make the processes to follow. So, just learning from other people. I went and visited a lot of different companies, saw the way that they did things, and took a lot of information from them to try to build things that made sense for our company. Um, ask clients a lot for feedback to be able to refine our processes that make sense for our specific demographic. What do they want to see? For example, we used to do appliance shopping before the clients had even seen a floor plan. And we finally got some feedback that we implemented of, hey, I have a really hard time picking out my appliances when I don't even know how it's going to lay out. And for me, as somebody in the industry, I'm like, well, of course you can pick out appliances without knowing the layout. You build the layout around the appliances. That's not how people that don't do this for a living think. So it was really helpful for us to hear that feedback and build it in. And so that's a constant part of what we do is a continuous improvement. It's one of our core values. Another thing that I thought was a really interesting lesson to learn um, in terms of processes is I don't have to do all of the jobs. And in fact, other people can do them better than me. At one point, I had to fire myself as estimator because I did such a bad job. I forgot stairs in an estimate one time, and I had relied on the team around me to catch things. But the problem is that if you're not the one preparing it, sometimes it's really difficult to be able to catch things in a review. You can catch a lot of things, but sometimes if it's something as basic as stairs in your head, you're just like, well, surely the stairs are in there. They weren't. They weren't. So one of my project managers was project management wasn't what he should be doing with his life. And I liked him and I knew that he was still a good fit for the company, but I knew that he wasn't a good fit for that role. And so we ended up moving him into estimating because he knew all of the things from project management. And oh my goodness, he has been thriving in that role. And another interesting thing is he was having some health issues during that time. And I really tried hard to get him to take care of his health and wasn't penalizing him for having to take off for doctor's appointments and things. And because his health has really improved, now he can actually give us his best self. And so that's been a really interesting thing to learn. It's not really a process. I mean, I could think it's kind of like maybe an HR process, but allowing my team to be able to take care of their health has allowed them to be able to do a better job and also enjoy working for us as much as possible. I mean, my office manager has been with us, oh my gosh, like 18 years or something, 17 years. Like she's been with
That's
us for
awesome.
a long time. My building designer is like 12 years. I mean, these people have been there for longer than I have. Um, I have a project manager who's been with us since 2018, which in this industry, you don't have project managers stick around that long. That is a hard job. And it's oftentimes fairly thankless. And so that's been a large thing that I think has been really important to me is taking care of the team. That's kind of what I think of as my role,
Yeah.
taking care
No,
of
I mean,
them.
I agree with you. I think, building the right team is arguably the most important thing that any leader can do because at the end of the day, like we're only one person. There's only so much that we can do. And, if we try to keep putting on every hat and do everything ourselves, I mean, that is exactly what leads to dropping balls and just not, being able to execute at that high level, that we want. And it's not because, we're not able to or trying to or want to. It's just we just physically don't have enough time and enough ability to focus on doing everything and doing it well. And so it's so important that we build the right team. And look, just like you said, sometimes you got to get the right people on the bus, but then you may have to get them into a different seat. I mean, one of my favorite books, Jim Collin, from Good to Great, right? Like right people on the bus, right people in the right seats on the bus, and then sometimes you got to get the wrong people off the bus. And I agree. I think letting someone go is one of the hardest things, that leaders have to do. But, at the end of the day, like if it's not the right fit and you've coached them and you've tried and it's still not working out, like you just have to make those tough calls. And I feel like a lot of people just, they just keep kicking that can. They keep saying, oh, they're going to change, or something will be different, or they're going to show up differently tomorrow. And it's like, look, we got to like quit lying to ourselves, and we got to make the hard decisions. And, I think ultimately it's kind of the responsibility of the leaders that we just have to do what needs to be done for the interest of the business, the team, our clients, and so it sounds like you've had to learn that lesson as well. And it's a very important one. What I'd love to dig in a little bit more to, because like, again, like you said that you didn't have the backbone early on, and you didn't know how to stand up for yourself. I mean, again, being a woman in this male dominated industry, I mean, you are an outlier, and you had to, learn to not let that affect your ability to build and lead a company in this industry. I mean, how do you feel like that how has that, been for you? Like, how have you overcome? Like, where did you get the confidence, to stand up to anyone and everyone? Because like I see so many, opportunities that women could step into these roles in this industry, but like it seems like there is a little bit of fear, and there, it's certainly not, easy. How did you figure it out, and like where did that confidence come from, and like what made the biggest impact for you to be able to lead?
Um, so that is such a good question. Uh, I think one of the biggest things that really turned it for me is getting fed up, to be perfectly candid. I took a lot from other people because I didn't have the confidence, I didn't have the backbone, and there were certain people I just let them walk all over me. Employees, trades. I I am a rose-colored glasses kind of a person, and so that can be really detrimental when you're dealing with people that are taking advantage of you. And that is exactly what happened to me. And so finally, I got to a point where I realized that I was going to lose my team and I was going to lose other things if I didn't get this figured out. And I was losing so much money on projects. I was losing client trust. I was losing team trust. And I realized that there was one specific source of this. And I, and it was somebody that had I thought, all of the construction knowledge. And part of the thing that was holding me back is I thought I had to have that person. I was so fixated on keeping the team intact and being proud of that, that I lost sight of the fact that sometimes people shouldn't be there. They don't have your best interests at heart. And if they aren't there for the right reasons. So I actually, during that time, I'd also gone through Traction. I'd started reading through Traction, and there's a lot about, right people, right seats, and looking at people and how do they compare to your core values, and how do they, pulling your core values from thinking about your best employees. And I realized that he not only didn't fit any of my core values, that he was actively detracting from everything. And so this was a management position, and there was one moment where I had expected him to come through for me, and he let me down in a huge way. And instead of being fearful and hoping that he would change and making excuses and saying that it's a one-off, I took the initiative and I sat down and I actually wrote him an email and put on my big girl pants and decided that I can do hard things. I can be brave. I mean, being brave isn't not being scared. It's doing it even when you're scared.
Yeah.
And so I was terrified. I was so scared. And then I sent that email. And of course, you have that panic of like, oh my God, what have I done? I can't believe I just did that. Because I had tried calling, I'd tried texting. He didn't answer at all. And so I finally sent the email. And by that point, there was nothing that I can't undo it at that point. I mean, it had started the ball rolling. And once I took that little step down that path of trying to hold him accountable, it snowballed from there. And the funny thing about confidence is that it is really baby steps. So that was the one turning point was just one single email. And through that one single email, I felt more proud of myself, which built into more confidence, which has me now to a place where I don't have a problem pulling someone into my office and saying, what are we doing here? Why are we doing that? You know that's not going to work like that. We don't do that here. But it took, this was 2021, and it took probably like 2 or 3 years for me to really build confidence to the point where I felt truly confident. It also helps that, you get, when that starts to happen, people start to notice you're building confidence, they'll comment on it. And that is really nice to hear. So then it's just this little snowball.
Yeah.
That just keeps going and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually one day you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I used to take that. I can't believe that was the way that I used to be. Really, for any women that are struggling with that fear, I think just starting, just doing a hard thing once and realizing, hey, I survived that. I can do another hard thing. It's scary, and it doesn't mean I'm not scared. It doesn't mean I wasn't then. I was terrified, but I just did it and kept going. And it's just, I think accountability is one of those biggest things that leaders can struggle with. It's a really common struggle. And once you start it, it just works so well. And I do think that we need more women in the industry. Especially doing what we do, I think a lot of times people are looking for women to work in their houses. And if you're looking for a man, there are so many other choices. There are great choices. I love my peers. I will absolutely recommend them to anybody. But if you're looking for me, you're probably not looking for them. And so I do think that there's a shortage of women in remodeling and women in leadership positions. Women have a very different way of approaching things. It's just kind of the way that we are. And I think you really need different people with different ideas to be able to have a successful industry. We have to have people with different backgrounds and different ways of thinking about things. Otherwise, we I don't know, it just doesn't quite work right.
Yeah. Well, it's, and it's challenging, when it had to get to that breaking point for you to just feel like you had no other option, but once you went in and you started, holding them accountable and, kind of making the tough call, you probably felt this sense of relief and this weight that just was off your shoulders, because if you're sitting there being undermined at every single turn, that is never a good recipe for anyone. And, I think at the end of the day, that is what is so unfortunate when you see leaders who and they may even know that this is happening, but they don't take action, and so at the end of the day though, it sounds like, you finally learn to make the tough call and to take action. And that step, again, it not only built confidence for you, but it sounds like it gave your team, this rejuvenated sense of okay, Kelly is our leader here. She isn't going to let this stuff fly. And when you start getting that momentum going, you're earning respect of your peers and your coworkers and your employees by doing the thing that a lot of people, I think, fear, letting someone go. You're always worried that well, is everyone else now going to think, are they going to let me go? Is the boss the bad guy because they let someone go? And they may have heard, that other person's side. And again, as leaders, we can't just go around and say, hey, here are all my issues with each one of these employees. You can't share that type of information, but I think when they see action and they, again, I think a lot of people innately know, yeah, that person, just wasn't the right person here. If you leave that one person who has a toxic, energy and attitude, and, again, the reality is probably a lot of people didn't enjoy working with them, regardless, I mean, nobody wants to see somebody else sit there and, undermine, one of their coworkers, much less their boss. And like, like that really doesn't, bode well. And some people think, oh, that's cool. It's how they build relationship. Let's talk bad about, someone else. And it's like, man, like, the reality is they're probably judging you just as much, if not more, for whatever you're saying. And so, good for you for not letting that person continue to run over you. And again, I think you're absolutely right that this industry needs more women leaders. We need more people because at the end of the day, like it's so important for a client to feel like they have the right contractor and they have a good relationship where they like them, they trust them. They are picking you as a person. And they want to make sure that they believe that that person will be the best fit for them to go and, rip out their house and tear out their kitchen. And like, there's a lot of trust that has to be built there. And again, I think that there's such a huge opportunity in this industry, but like we need more women to hear your story and to hear the successes. I have met some of the most successful construction companies out there are run by women, and it's incredible when they can really truly, build that team and they lean into, we are different. We are the woman. We are going to lead you and give you the best customer experience that you could ever ask for. Like that is exactly what has created so many successful women-led businesses here. But like, again, they're not hearing those stories enough. We need more people to hear those stories and to see those successes. And I'm not sure if you've talked to Erica and Anna and Taylor. I mean, we have an incredible group of women here at JobTread, and they're actually creating, a women in construction, event that's going to be, the day before JobTread Connect, which is like so exciting to bring together so many people so that they can see the successes and they can hear the stories and they can learn from others. You said it earlier, like having that peer network and the support group and, peer groups, like that is so important for everyone. And so like we're excited to be spearheading this and hopefully, can inspire more women to continue joining this industry and leading because, just like you said, I think you can make a huge impact.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think that there is kind of an untapped network there of women in construction that we want to get together more because our experience is a little bit different and there aren't as many of us. And our local GHBA chapter didn't have a professional women in building group until, like 2023 or something like that. And right when we started it, it became one of the largest chapters in the country because it was just this like pent up desire for like, I want to be in this group, but we just didn't have ability to get it off the ground. So I'm so excited that y'all are doing that. That is fantastic. Also, I mean, kudos to you and to all of JobTread for an incredible Connect experience. I mean, that is, last year was our first time to go, and I was blown away at how amazing it was and how much I learned and just the incredible thought and effort put into an event like that. I mean, it was next level. And so I have no doubt that the Women in Construction event that y'all are putting on this year is going to be just as beneficial and fruitful as the rest of the experience that I've had.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Of course.
We definitely have an incredible team, and they work very, very hard to to plan that event. I mean, it's like we're now actually, I think we're working on securing locations like all the way through 2031 now, I believe. And it's like having to like the challenge has been with our venue. We're kind of constrained. I mean, we've just like blowing the walls off this thing and trying to figure out how do we maximize that because we sell out every year, and like I mean that's like the last thing we want, but like there's really not that many venues large enough because like we're kind of like in this like 1,000 to 1,500 people. They're it's kind of like this like middle spot where you got a bunch of venues for smaller groups and then you got a bunch of venues for huge thousands of people, but kind of like that middle void has been very challenging for us. But I'm with you. I think it's so important that we keep bringing people together so that they can meet others and they can network. And I think a lot of times people just they feel like you're alone at the top, and like we don't have anyone else that knows what we're going through because we're the business leaders and the owners, and like, nobody else gets it. And it's like, man, like that's not the case. Like so many people are going through the exact same thing as we are at the exact same moment, or maybe they've already been through it. And it's like, you can learn so much from so many other people. And that's why like I work so hard on this podcast, and want to share these stories, because like, again, like you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. Like you got to go invest in your own learning, your own development, invest in your team's professional development, because like that is ultimately what's going to make the biggest impact for everyone here, including, your team, your company, but also your clients and their success, and being able to recruit, more clients and more trade partners. And like, it all kind of feeds into itself. And I think once you get this like energy, and this like momentum going, it can keep building on itself. And yeah, so I'm obviously a big fan of what we do with Connect, and I'm really excited for the Women's Summit this year, and it's going to be awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I grew up, obviously I'm from Texas. I grew up in church and felt a bit like church campish, that high that you get when you're like at the church camp, it was, hadn't had that feeling in quite a while. So it was kind of fun, that like just super energized feeling where you're like, I'm going to go out, we're going to crush everything. Everything's going to be fantastic. Yeah. And having not just me, but a team member there too was also really cool. I'm so glad that it's an event that isn't just for business owners. Because yes, being a business owner can be very lonely, but I think sometimes we do get to a place where we do a lot of professional development on ourselves. But I think sometimes we can get too carried away on that and forget about the professional development that we need for our team members too. And they need to learn that as well. I mean, it's just as important for them, and having those opportunities to learn about business and understand things also empowers them to be able to treat our businesses like their own, and to have that, owner's mentality, which has been really beneficial. And my employee who went with us last year, he is, my goodness, head over heels for Job Tread. And he has taken this and he will just do things on his own now, because he feels confident enough in both the software and in my trust of him that he will just like, all right, hey guys, I'm going to have this done for your daily logs. You're going to see some changes coming in, and this is the way we're going to do our scheduling now. It is the coolest thing to see this happening. And I just get to sit back and watch it. And gosh, so beautiful.
Yeah, it's awesome when you have a team that truly does feel empowered, and they know they have the support of the leadership, and they can go and they can take initiative, they can implement change, and then they can inspire the people around them to also adopt and do it. And so it doesn't feel like as leaders we're having to just hammer all these things in. It's like you've got this, groundswell, and people like, want to do it. They want to make the change. They want to be better. And that's when I think you really know that you have unlocked the potential of your people and your team when you start seeing that stuff happen.
It's funny. I have two small children that are 4 and 6. And I think a large part of what has developed me as a leader is also what's developing me as a parent, where like it's kind of the same mentality. Like I'm raising two small humans to become big humans that are successful. And I'm, keeping the guardrails on them while they learn to become a human. But also with employees, like I'm entrusted with these people, and I have to keep the guardrails on them while they learn their jobs and how we do jobs together. And so it is kind of like a similar mentality between parenting and having employees, management, where like you're still trying to guide people doing things. I don't know. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, I got to ask, since I now know you've got, a 10-year plan there. I mean, what's the vision here? I mean, you've got a second generation company. You've done a phenomenal job taking over and building out the business, and have now made your mark on it. Where do you want to take the business over the next, 5-10 years? Like what's kind of the goal here? Is it to maybe hand it off to one of your children one day, or what do do you have thoughts on that?
I don't, because my children, again, even in 10 years, my oldest will only be 16. And at that point, he will have no idea what he wants to do with his life, I'm sure. Although already he's like, I'm an engineer. And my daughter is like, she changes her mind, doctor or dentist. 4 years old. She's going to be a dentist. 4 years old. That's crazy. Love her. She's
No,
crazy.
it's awesome.
I don't know where we're ultimately headed in terms of like who will eventually be in charge after me. But really the vision is to grow and to grow it to a place where the people that I have that I'm building up as team members will eventually get to have their own teams, because I think that they're all fantastic people. But I also want to give them the opportunity to either grow into a new role or to stay where they are, whatever makes the most sense for them and makes the most sense for the company, but giving them more opportunities and being able to work with more clients, because Houston's huge. So there's so many opportunities for both us and all of my peers to be able to thrive in this city. And so I think that's really the goal, is to get to a point where we're large enough to have a really good amount of clients where we can help a lot of people live their best lives.
It's awesome, Kelly. I love your focus on everyone else. You truly want everybody around you to succeed, and I can just see how you lift them up and have their best interest from your team members to your clients. Like, I mean, that is a very, impressive sign of a great leader, and it's just so awesome to see you, doing this.
That's my why. That's my why. The book, like Find Your Why, that kind of stuff. My why is to create a safe and non-judgmental place to help others bloom.
That's awesome. So look, as we wrap up here, I want to give you an opportunity to, if you had to pick, a few pieces of advice to share with others who maybe earlier on in their career, maybe they're trying to decide whether to go into the industry, what advice would you give them, knowing what you've been through, seeing the challenges that you've overcome, if you had to pick just a couple things, what would they be?
I mean, really, my biggest advice would absolutely be build your network and just find people that have done what you want to do. I mean, this is true for not just our industry, but for everybody in life. Find a mentor, find somebody that you can lean on, find people that you trust and can ask questions and be vulnerable. I mean, find people that want to see you succeed, but also if somebody does not have your best interest in mind, they don't need to be in your life. They don't need to be there. Only surround yourself with the right people. And if you surround yourself with the right people, you're going to be fine.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for coming on. I know this probably couldn't be easy to have to, talk about your transition here and taking over the business after, having such a hard, loss in your life. And I'm so sorry for that. But I can't tell you how impressed I am with the business that you've been, that you've built. I mean, it's been awesome and an honor just to be a vendor of yours and just, your software provider, but like seeing your success it really is. This is what motivates us. It's such an inspiration to so many others out there. And I really appreciate you sharing your story so that we can help spread the word and hopefully it'll be an inspiration to many other women who are thinking about entering the industry or have already entered it, but maybe struggling. You have done a phenomenal job, and we are just so honored to have you part of our Job Tread family here.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be on the podcast as well.
All righty. Have a great one.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Builder Stories. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained valuable insights that can help you in your journey along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. And as always, if you or someone you know has a story to share, please contact us at builderstories.com. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Eric Fortenberry, and remember, every builder has a unique story. Keep building yours.